I'd like to call the City Council meeting to order. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis. Here. Gray. Here. Boudreaux.
Here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Petty. Tennant.
Here.
Farrell. Adams.
Here.
Mayor Jordan.
Here. Would you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first order of business we have on City Council meeting presentation, reports, and discussion items. We have the second quarter financial report given by Paul Becker.
Good evening. These are the financial reports through the first half of the year, through June. And I'm happy to report, if we look at the general fund, because of sales tax being up 7% for the city and 6% for the county, we're actually running a small surplus. And that's good news, because if we remember, we predicated the budget on the possibility of a $498,000 deficit. Plus, as you remember, with your approval, we granted a salary package to the employees that's going to cost us approximately $800,000 through the end of the year. So for us to be running a surplus right now puts us right on track. Hopefully we will not have to go into a deficit this year. We'll end up with a surplus and we'll be able to cover the salary increases that we recommended to you and you approved. So that's the good news in the general fund. So look at some of the other funds. The HMR taxes are up roughly 12% for the year, so they're doing very well. That's good for the Parks Development Fund and, of course, for the A&P Commission. Water and sewer revenue is up. Obviously, as we all know, in the drought period, our water sales are up. That's the good side of it. The bad news is it puts our lines under strain and our repair costs are higher than what they normally are, but it looks like we might generate a surplus this year, which is good because we've got plenty of capital needs going out in the future. The other funds seem to be holding their own pretty well, and I don't have any problems to report at this point in time. So the news at this point is good, and things are looking pretty good through the end of the year if they continue the way they are. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What questions we have for Paul on this?
Sounds great.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, council. Good job.
Question, Mayor.
Yes.
Hey, Paul, you said the water, because the drought was running high, can you give me an idea of about how much above projection it's running?
In usage, about 12%.
Thank you.
About 12% at this point in time.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, now on to the consent agenda. Number one, approval of the July 17, 2012 City Council meeting minutes. Number two, Drake Field Pavement Rehab and Remarking Phase 2 project. A resolution approving a budget adjustment in the amount of $7,012 to reflect modifications to the Drake Field Pavement Rehab and Remarking Phase 2 project necessitated by grant program changes. Number three, Pavement Maintenance Unlimited LLC, change order number 2. Resolution approving change order number 2 to a contract with Pavement Maintenance Unlimited LLC, reducing the contract by $22,050 for the pavement rehab and remarking Phase 2 project, Drake Field, and approving budget adjustment. Number 4, bid number 12-51, Truck Centers of Arkansas, resolution awarding bid number 12-51 and authorizing the purchase of 2 Freightliner M2 trucks from Canversa Haul Recycled Bodies in the total amount of $314,366 from Truck Centers of Arkansas for use by the Solid Waste Division. Number 5, Preferred Office Products Incorporated, resolution authorizing the purchase of 5 Canon copiers in the total amount of $63,723 pursuant to a state procurement contract from Preferred Office Products Incorporated. Number 6, Federal and State Law Enforcement Forfeiture Revenue, resolution authorizing a budget adjustment in the amount of $28,558 representing federal and state law enforcement forfeiture revenue received during 2012 and establishing a corresponding expense budget. Number 7, Arkansas Department of Parks and Tourism Outdoor Recreation Grant. Resolution authorizing the application for a 50-50 matching grant to the Arkansas Department of Parks and Tourism Outdoor Recreation Grant Program in the amount of $50,000 for improvements at Mount Sequoia Gardens. Number 8, Arkansas Recreational Trails Program. Resolution expressing the willingness of the City of Fayetteville to utilize federal aid recreational trails funds and authorizing application for a 20% local match grant to the Arkansas Recreational Trails Program in the amount up to $100,000 for construction of a section of Lake Fayetteville Trail. Number 9, 2012 Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality Recycling Grant. Resolution authorizing application for a 2012 Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality Recycling Grant through the Boston Mountain Solid Waste District in the amount of $25,000 to fund apartment recycling containers. And number 10, McClellan Consulting Engineers resolution approving an engineering contract with McClellan Consulting Engineers in the amount of $131,328 plus $20,000 project contingency for design service for the State Highway 16 water and sewer relocation project at the West Fork of the White River. And so,
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as read. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell, Adams,
Yes.
Okay. Under unfinished business, number 1, amend 154.03 private party zoning amendment. An ordinance to amend 154.03 private party zoning amendment to clarify the powers of the Planning Commission and City Council when a property owner seeks rezoning. I'll entertain a motion to go to second reading.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
An ordinance to amend section 15403, private parties zoning amendment, to clarify the powers of the Planning Commission and City Council when a property owner seeks rezoning.
Sarah?
I had some citizens request that we leave it on the second reading to, one, they have some people that wouldn't be here, but also they've requested an opinion by the Attorney General on it. So, and I don't think that there's a hurry on it, so I understand.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there any public comment on this?
I have a question, Mayor.
Sure.
Does this in any way affect the apparent litigation? Us-
This does not. There was no official petition presented that claimed to be operative for this section, and I would have informed you that that petition could not affect the amount of votes needed to pass that ordinance anyway. I don't object to having it being left on a second reading, or as long as it takes to get an Attorney General's opinion, which could be a significant period of time. If a petition is filed in interim, though, I will say that that does not affect the number of votes it takes to pass.
That's my,
Yeah.
you answered part of it, I mean, indirectly, and then the other part was, I was thinking, when you say an indeterminate amount of time, is there any, could you give an average amount of time that it takes to seek an opinion?
Usually it takes the Attorney General about 2 to 3 months to respond to this, unless it's some sort of real critical issue that he will expedite, and I don't see this being a critical issue, so I would expect 2 to 3 months probably.
Thank you.
Okay.
So are we leaving this on the second reading or table?
Yeah.
No, just leave it on.
Leave it on second reading.
They can table it next week.
Everybody good? All right, under new business, number 1, United States Tennis Association. Resolution authorizing acceptance of a renovation services to tennis courts at Wilson Park by the United States Tennis Association as part of its 2-court renovation grant program at no cost to the city of Fayetteville. Connie?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Fayetteville Parks and Recreation, we have a wonderful opportunity to receive a $10,000 grant from USTA in which to renovate 2 courts at Wilson Park. This is a 2-court project in which 1 court would be resurfaced and redone for the adults. The other tennis court would be renovated to have 4 youth courts on it. We're very excited about this. This is a push that USTA has to try to keep youth playing tennis. I think some youth are intimidated by the long length of having to serve the ball and all, and they're kind of going after what baseball has done with t-ball, what soccer has done with having smaller fields and goals for the children to play on, what basketball has done in lowering the basket and making it a smaller court for the younger children. So I think it's a great way that we can keep our youth playing so that we can have a great tennis program. We do know that we would like to have some more courts. Citizens keep saying we want more courts, and we do have that planned for the regional park, in which we would put up to 6 to 8 courts there, and could serve those clientele there. So that's our plan. I think one of the biggest problems people have had is the usage by the high school, which happens during the school year. And now that they have their own courts, that will be alleviated. So, and the university, I know they're working on also trying to get courts. So that would help. These courts, we have heard through USTA, have the possibility of seniors liking to play on it. And some people say that they'll even play pickleball on it. So I think it will have some opportunity for other people. And basically, I think too, for mothers and fathers or brothers and sisters to be able to play with their younger children, to be able to teach the sport to them on that smaller court. So we believe we'll be reaching out, serving people, serving the younger children, which we don't do a lot in tennis on for it right now. And I think this movement that USTA is doing will be contagious all over the United States. So we do request that we do receive this $10,000 grant. There is an opportunity from the State Tennis Association to receive an additional $1,500. And this grant will never receive it. They'll bid it out, and they'll come in and do the courts for us. So it's a real nice turnkey opportunity. The 2 courts that we have are in terrible condition. You almost have to weed eat them to keep the grass from growing between the cracks. So they are in dire need of being renovated. Any questions?
Yes, what questions do we have for Conrad?
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any questions. I'm just saying, I'm just very happy that we're doing this. I think anything we can do to encourage our children in sports takes care of lots of problems. Plus, tennis is something that you can play for a long, long, long time. As we all know, seniors play. So I think the earlier we can start, the better. I think this is great.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Sarah?
You're talking about the amount of the grant is $11,500. What's the cost of a new court? Like, what's the estimated cost of
we looked up
brand
that
new court?
cost. It seems like it's around $40,000 or so.
Okay, thank you.
40 to 50 at least. And I don't want to be quoted on that. I might need to go back and we looked it up not too long ago, but they're quite expensive. Our Parks Board, we did take it to our Parks Board and allowed for public input at that meeting, and there were some concerns from some of our citizens. We do have some Park Board members here, if you all have any questions for them too.
Question, Mayor.
Yes.
One of the complaints that I got via email a couple of times and mentioned to me once was that the way this is going to be built, there will be some fencing around the smaller courts that will inhibit the play on the adult court that will be next to it. And so my big concern was, are we trying too hard to do the right thing and we're going to end up taking too much away on the other side? Is that a good enough way to ask that question to you to explain that part?
Chase is here. He's done more research on this than I have. I'm going to let him
Yeah.
put up.
Come on up, Chase.
Thank you.
Yeah, we met with last week, and we actually addressed that because that's something that had been expressed to us too. So the thing is, with the youth courts, you don't have to give as much length on the baselines. in terms of additional room to play. And so that fence will actually be shifted, so it won't split. Like if this is the two courts, it won't split right down the middle. It'll be offset about 4 feet to the
Okay.
east side.
Because the youth ones will be a little bit closer together. 'Cause
Right,
you
so
won't
the-
need the space on the side. Basically.
Right, so right now on the full-size court, you would have here, and then the fence is, you know,
Right.
say 12 feet, I think is what it is.
Uh-huh.
On the youth, you can go all the way down to 6 feet. So we'll
Okay.
shift all those over an additional 6 feet.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
I have a question. Mayor.
Yes.
When the parks were, in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, on a few occasions, there have been people that came and spoke to the council asking that we have more adult tennis courts. In the process of planning, I noticed there's a couple of spots in town that are heavily funded, some of the parks and things. How do you assess where parks is going to go? I remember specifically one time when we were talking about having the regional park, that people came in here, kind of an organized bunch, and not only were they saying then, which was what, 4 years ago, that they certainly wanted more tennis courts, but that they didn't want to wait for they didn't particularly want to wait for the park. They'd like to have a few added. So how do you weigh with the wants of different parts of the community? And I'm certainly not opposed to tennis for youth or seniors.
Well, it just depends on the situation. I mean, we do a lot of public input meetings. Every year when we do our outdoor recreation grant, we take public input at that meeting. When we talked about the regional park, we did pretty extensive public meetings for that, where people were allowed to give their input. At that time, the people who were attending those meetings, they were overwhelmingly in favor of a group of 6 to 8 courts together, rather than having 2 courts here and 2 courts there, and having smaller complexes spread out there throughout the community. They wanted them all together for 2 reasons. One, that way you could host a tournament or an event. And secondly, they were just saying, if you have 2 court pods, you may drive to one. There's 4 people playing. You get in your car, you drive the next one. There's 4 people playing. And if you put them all in one spot, then you go to that one destination, and the opportunity to play is that much greater, because the odds of all of them being full at that time are a lot less than just a 2-court complex. So we had significant meetings in relation to that, and that was kind of the feedback that we got from the majority of people, is that they wanted all of them together. And then at that time, that's when we started looking at potential sites for that, and the regional park obviously made the most sense, because when we look at our current parks and their structure, it's difficult to find somewhere where we could plug in 6 or 8 courts in one location. So that's kind of been, that's why we've approached it the way it has. Obviously, the regional park has taken a lot longer than we anticipated 5 or 6 years ago, and so, you know, when that decision was made, we had no idea that it would be this far out.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Chad.
Thanks.
Now we'll take public comment. The rules are, introduce yourself and give us your address, please. One time at the microphone, unless an alderman brings you back, to ask you questions, address the chair, which would be me, and please don't engage the council or anybody in the public.
I'm Bill Ward, live in Fayetteville, about 30 years. Bill Ward, Mr. Mayor, council people. I know a lot of you received a lot of emails and talks and conversation about that. I'm surprised we didn't get more feedback, because there's a lot of issues that aren't discussed here. We have a need of tennis courts. We only have 20% of what we should have had by 2010. We needed 40 courts by 2010 by studies done. We have 8, and it's been dwindling for the last 20 years, dwindling. The high school courts, they talked about that. They built 8 new courts, but they're locked. So high school players outside of their practice team time, and all of the high school players who aren't on the team still come to the public courts. They in fact have less courts for the high school regular students. The college, they still come down. We still sell our college time to the college for our public courts. I've played with plenty of college players down there, even seen college team players down there when the facility's locked for them. So we have a real shortage. The issue is not, do we get free money for resurfacing? They all need resurfacing. We haven't had a new court since 1979. And I would love to have 4 new courts anywhere, 2 new courts anywhere, 8 new courts anywhere. I haven't said we don't want a small amount of courts. I'd love to have 2 in every park in town, because we build small parks for the communities. We don't have to have a destination park. Talked about the little fences. Those courts are going to put them on are already very narrow. There's really not a legal enough room between the two. Any fence in there is going to make it difficult when you have a side serve or you're playing doubles. You actually will be running into the fences. We already run into the side fence that limit the court, and it's 10 feet. There's 12 feet between the two courts. I don't care if you divide it 6-6 or 8-4 or whatever, it's still going to be narrower than the other side we already run into. And if they're not 12 foot high, all the little kids on 4 little courts are going to be knocking balls over all the time, totally disrupting that adult court. So it's going to take those two courts out of commission, or 25% of our adult courts. I use the term adult loosely because these courts are strictly for 10-year-olds or under. So an 11-year-old is an adult in this town. So that's a lot of people that want to play on all these courts that we have, or don't have. Let me draw you an analogy. I've heard we have a parking problem on Dixon Street. Been discussed. We can solve that by taking 25% of the parking spots, cutting them in half for motorcycles, smart cars, little Fiat 500s, and any small vehicle, and we'll increase our parking down there and we'll have no more problems. So for tennis, let's go ahead and chop a few up, and that'll give us a lot more courts for everybody to play on. It doesn't work that way. We really need courts. I congratulate Connie and the Parks Department for saying we have a need. And I'd say, you as a council, would you put money aside, make a proclamation if you can, and say, let's build courts. Let's get 8 new courts in Gully Park right now. It's a great place for new courts with lights. That would still be less than 50% of what we need in this town. Maybe you guys don't play tennis, but Springdale, Rogers, they beat us all over with courts. Bentonville just built 12 brand new lit courts, full facilities, hot water running, lights all night, free to the public. What do we have here? We have a college team, you know. I think we ought to get on a stick here and do what's right for the adults in this town. I promote kids too. You can't train kids and say, well, you don't have any place to play at 11 years old because we have fewer courts. You know, the Williams sisters, they play good tennis. They grew up on public courts full size. So it's possible for kids to move in a little bit and serve inside the back line just to play tennis. They don't have to have their own special courts. So please, let's resurface our courts. Let's build new courts, but don't give them away. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask him a question?
Yes.
Sir, can I ask you a question? You by any chance know Alan Beecham?
Sure.
I guess I would call him Mr. Tennis, because ever since I've been a child, you know,
Yeah, he's quite a character, yeah.
Yes,
He's
yes,
played for
but
the university.
Yes,
Coach.
avid tennis teacher, player.
He still has a
promoter.
clay court out by his house or out there.
Do you know if he has an opinion on this? He was
We've
raised
talked to
right-
him at the park one time in passing, and I won't quote what he might say, but yes, I know he knows we need courts in this town. You know, he's not playing much more than himself. His brother David, younger brother, who also played at the U of A, is playing 60 and over international tennis, or national tennis. He's still good, and so their family's good at tennis.
Thank you.
But, any other questions?
Thank
Thank you.
Who else?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Lee. This is my daughter Kennedy and Mackenzie, and we're coming to speak on behalf of the tennis courts. For the past 3 years, both of these girls have had the option to do the summer camp through the Fayetteville Parks and Recreation, the Be Active camps, and each year I've given them the option to choose which camps they've wanted, and they've always chosen tennis. And we don't really have any access to tennis courts with like a health club or in our neighborhood or anything, so this is the opportunity for them to get to play. And for me, I'm not a tennis player, but I feel like it's important for them because if they really truly like it and they learn how to do it at a young age, this could truly be something that they could go forward with and possibly get a college scholarship. So these two girls actually wanted to just tell you just a couple reasons why they are in favor of the youth tennis camp.
Hi, I'm Kennedy, and I'm 10 years old, and I live in Fayetteville. And I like the little tennis courts better because it's easier to get the ball over the net, and the taller, bigger tennis courts are a little harder for me because I can't really get the ball over the net and stuff. So I think the little courts are easier for me because I learned it's a longer game of tennis, and I learn a lot more. Hi, I'm Mackenzie, and I'm 7 years old, and I like the little tennis courts better because I can play a full game and learn more tennis easier.
Thank you all very much.
Do you have any questions? Good? Okay.
Who else would like to comment on this? Come on, please.
Hello, I'm Paul Williams. I sent a letter to everyone on the council and to the mayor about this issue. So I don't believe I need to repeat all of that. But I would like to add that I think tennis is a wonderful game. One you can play your entire life. One of my tennis heroes, Chuck Okerbloom, who taught art here at the university, Chuck played until he was 90 years old. He quit and then he died. But if promoting youth tennis is a policy goal, I believe that we need to look at all of the options, all of the ways that we might go about doing this, and as Bill said, not produce a situation in which we get kids interested in tennis, they start learning how to play it, and there are no facilities for them. We're losing courts. As I pointed out in my letter, we would probably not be losing one, but 2 courts to adult recreation because of the fence that would be built between the 2 adjacent courts to keep the children's balls out of the other court. Make the sidelines so tight that especially playing doubles, there's not enough room on the sidelines to run down those wide shots and wide serves. 25%. I would encourage everyone to think about this a bit more. See what the options really are and where we can get the most bang for our buck. What I see is our losing 2 courts, 25% of what we have, at a replacement cost of at least $50,000 each, in return for $10,000. That arithmetic doesn't work for me. As I said in the letter, we know what will be lost. We do not know with any certainty what will be gained. And a question I've had that I have not yet had answered by anyone, who will provide instruction on these courts? Will there be a fee for that? Will youth players, young players, be charged to use public facilities? And I hope the council will take some time to consider all the ramifications of this decision, as well as to consider what can best be done in the future to help promote tennis for youth and the adults they'll become. Questions?
Any questions? Mayor.
You said you had inquired about who would provide instruction. You haven't received a response?
No one has been able to tell me.
Can anybody tell us who's going to provide the instruction for the child's tennis, or is this Connie or Mayor? I'm just...
Yeah, we talked about it.
Chase, come on up to the mic, please.
Yeah, it was brought up at Parks Board. It's not, we're not setting the courts up to have instructors come in and charge fees for organized instruction. There will be organized programming there, obviously, to try to bring kids in. But in fact, the point is quite the opposite. The point is that you create somewhere for that kids can come and play on their own, and their parents can bring them down there and sit down and watch them, and they can have an opportunity to play. And that's part of the argument for having them permanent rather than the temporary nets that you can put up, is that the only opportunity you can have with the temporary nets is if there's an instructor there and they're providing instruction. So that's part of the USTA's push, is you create these permanent courts the same way that a kid can go down and play on a soccer field, you know, that's there, that's smaller, that's geared to their size. And so it's actually to move away from more of the, right now, 90% of tennis that's being played at that age is probably in an organized environment with an instructor, with a fee at a private club, that sort of thing. So USTA is realizing they're missing a whole group of kids, middle income to low income, and that's part of the push. So we certainly have no intention of there being an instructor there that's charging fees.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, there is no provision for any instruction.
We currently do not have any plans, but we do have plans to provide programming there. So we may
Sure.
have a tennis day or that sort of thing through the USTA.
Any other questions? Thank you all
Thank
for
you,
your
Mr.
time.
Wade. Who else?
Hello, my name is Philip Watson. I'm on the Parks Advisory Board, and I just wanted to make myself available for if there was any questions as far as what the advisory board went through as far as coming to the conclusion that we came to of approving this. One additional point that I would like to make is that another reason why this seems to be a good fit is because it's in Wilson Park, which is a centrally located park, which kind of gives equal access to most of Fayetteville to come in there for the children to come and play. We're very big proponents of any kind of child sports and promoting sports in the youth, and we just wanted to make sure that there's, you know, the adults are speaking for the kids as well. So, is there any questions or anything?
Can I ask Phil a question?
Mm-hmm.
Phil, did you or anybody get any feedback from any elementary schools, like any of the PE teachers, any of the folks that might, you know, have an idea whether this was something good or not? And the reason I asked this, I asked a PE teacher that doesn't live here, but in another town, they said, well, anytime you have courts for kids to play tennis, they'll probably play tennis, and they don't play tennis in their elementary school PE because they don't have a court at the school, so there's no place to go play. And one thing that he did mention, he said, but of course, where we live, we don't have a lot of public courts either, so you have to belong to a club, and a lot of kids either can't afford it or whatever. I'm just wondering if anybody from the schools had any input, or if you guys...
Not with me directly. That was brought up. I believe there was a lot of requests for that age bracket for courts specifically for that. I think Connie or Chase could probably answer that question a little bit better.
Yeah, I would say,
Sorry.
I would say probably more indirectly. I mean, kids from the schools, I haven't spoken directly with any of the PE teachers. I have in the past, several years ago, a lady that used to work for us that was a PE teacher at Root. When these courts first came about, we were talking about how nice it would be, and she was, you know, commenting on that. But we haven't spoken directly, but we have over 2,000 youth participants in our programs, and have heard overwhelmingly from the majority of them that, you know, this would be a wonderful thing, and also that it would be nice if there was an opportunity for parks to do some tennis programming, you know, so people would have the opportunity to come out and participate in sort of a park environment rather than a more competitive private club environment.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, I might ask you all to turn off your cell phones if you have any. Okay. Go ahead.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
So were there, and whoever is able and willing to answer this, that's fine, but what kind of, I keep hearing, or I heard earlier, the need for 40 more courts, and so I'm wondering if there's an analysis or numbers on the use of our courts, and then are they not, you know, they're not being used, so we recognize that it's available, or they're so used and all those numbers are going to shift to now 7 courts, and it's like, so I'm thinking there must be a courts per capita ratio that...
There is a couple of issues. I believe Connie brought it up earlier that the high school is reserving those fields from 3 to 6 o'clock most afternoons, and once that they're gone, that's going to open up a lot of space because they'll be moving out toward where Asbo, where the new fields are being put in. Beyond that, wasn't there some other discussion? Chase has more facts.
Yeah, we did 2 separate surveys, one in 2009 and then one in June of this year. Granted, they're during the day, and we realize it is hot during the day, but we were just trying to get a feel because they did cover 8 to 10 in the morning, and they did cover 6 to 8 at night. And those numbers, I actually had sent them to Justin earlier, had asked for them, but they just showed that it's rare, maybe once a week, that all 6 of those courts are full. And then we additionally have staff that works there in the morning, and then a lot of us are there at night if we have different events and stuff at Wilson. And it's been our observation that there's certainly more use later in the evening, the part that's not on the survey, but even at that point, it's not that often that you find all 6 of them full. And particularly people, it's been our observation, will tend to wait due to the poor shape of the lower two courts, they'll wait for an upper court. So those courts in particular, those two lower ones, almost always have an opening on them. And then as far as the number of courts, that's based on the NRPA, the National Recreation and Park Association. And that was, a lot of those numbers are from a study that we did with the university earlier this spring. That just assessed what we had in parks and what our needs were. So, and a lot of those haven't been updated for quite a while. We also need 128 more picnic tables in parks was one of the other things. We need, I think, 32 more softball fields. So there was a lot in the study that showed a lot of areas. And once again, we're aware that we need more courts. We just think this is a great opportunity. It's a great time for this to take place. So we're not denying that there's a need for more courts for adults.
What were the dates again that you took?
We had the summer of 2009 one ran from June 9th to July 6th. And then the summer 2012 one ran from June 15th, which is when we were initially approached about that, until June 30th, which was right before we went to Park Board with it.
And the reason I ask that is because I live immediately across from the courts, and during the academic years, whenever we see more use of the courts, first of all, it's cooler, and again, when you've done the survey, it's been in the heat of the day.
Been a warm summer.
So I do think that it is unfair to characterize this as I think it's a general idea, but I don't think that it is a valid, I don't think that the variables are valid that we're looking at. In general, if we look at around the academic year, it's seldom that I walk through the park in the evening during the academic year that people are not waiting for the courts. And I live there, so I know that the need is there. I know that it's important. During the agenda session, we were, I think it was Don Marr said we could go to the U.S. Tennis Association website, which I did. They mentioned that I had bookmarked it. There is a lot of towns that have these courts, and they have modular courts that seem to be more affordable for a youth tennis program, and I don't know if we could look into that for affordability with this grant. But I'm very empathetic with the adults that utilize the only 6 courts that we have, especially during the academic year, because we do have a great deal of usage in the evening. It's unfortunate that all the courts are not lit. I see individuals playing well into the twilight in the other courts too, because it is cool. So I don't know. I think that there is a real valid concern with the information that I've received from avid tennis fans that this might be a sacrifice that is not a balance with what we're getting in our current parks and recreation program. So that's what I've got to think about whenever I'm looking at this. And again, using numbers from June to July is probably the most inappropriate time that you could do if you're looking at activity in the park, because also the pool is open at this time, so it's going to put some people over in the pool and other programs. And I just have to point that out because it's what I see in general whenever I am in the park area.
Well, in terms of the modular courts, just to answer that one really quick, this grant is just for a renovation that includes permanent youth courts. So, and with the modular, we do have some of those units that we use for camp, but once again, someone has to be there, set them up, and oversee everything that's happening. And as I mentioned earlier, that's the USTA is trying to move towards a more, I guess, organic would be the term, opportunity for the.
Well, there's no doubt that we have the need. I earnestly know we need this, and we need it sooner rather than later. We need resurfacing. We need lighting. We're off track because of the unfortunate activity on developing our regional park, but I can't validate the sacrifice whenever I'm looking at the variables that we are currently using in our parks at this time, because I do see on a personal level, people just waiting there, waiting to get onto the courts, especially during the academic school year. So, and that's unfortunate. I hate to see the sacrifice.
And we have in the past rented all 6 of those to the high school from that 3 to 6. And then when they had a match, then that would last sometimes to 7 and 7:30. So obviously that time we feel like the main time that we've observed where there were wait periods, that all that traffic, you know, the majority of it will be alleviated when they move over to their new courts.
Rhonda?
Earlier I heard, I think it was Mr. Williams talk about, he said strictly 10 and under would be permitted on these courts, but then Connie addressed a question I had earlier, which was, will it be appropriate for seniors or people who want to play slower or smaller tennis, like me, to get out there and use those courts? Is it strictly 10 and under? That was I think that's what Mr. Williams said.
No, I mean, it would be open to anyone at any time.
No one's enforcing age.
And we have had some calls about people that are pickleball players and just asking about the dimensions of it, and we're interested in trying to do some, because there's really nowhere for outdoor pickleball right now. So the dimensions are a little bit different, but they seemed fairly excited at the prospect of getting out there.
And then the second question I have is, I understand that we're planning for the regional park and all of that, but do we have any short-term plans at all in the new year to do anything in the tennis court area? Do y'all have, as a parks department, have you talked about what we might be able to do? Can we do anything?
We've talked. I don't know that we've talked in a formal, official way. I mean, we've discussed it about the possibility, and when you look at the regional park, you know, and you start talking about the phases and you know how quickly things move with that. So yeah, we're aware of it, and we've talked about it, and you know, our capital improvement projects are out there, and you know, they include different sites. We don't have tennis on any of those currently. We do have lighting the 2 courts at Wilson on one of those, but we don't have the construction of new ones.
Okay. Thank you.
Question about the grant application, but it sounds like.
Yeah. I was just going to address a little bit more to Rhonda. Her question, I talked to Barry Gibhart, who is the athletic director at the high school, and he said that they will be opening up, there are 8 courts to the public. There will be a small fee. They're also opening it up to their school staff and members of their families for it. And they're looking at trying to do some kind of a tennis program there to encourage and also support our tennis community. So that is going to, I think that was one of the reasons that helped us with that decision, that the high school's taking care of themselves, even their staff members. In addition to, we have this one-time opportunity for this $10,000 grant to renovate courts that are in high need of it. We have needs of the youth. In my eyes, and I know the adults, they're very important. It's important for them to keep exercising as we get older too. However, I think we're opening up 3 more courts for someone to be playing on. So to me, it's only increasing the usage. We have many other sports that need more facilities, such as basketball. If you go to basketball at Wilson Park or even at Walker Park, the other night I know there was like 22 people waiting to play basketball. At sand volleyball, there was up in the 20s, you know. So there are a lot of needs. We have a lot of needs out there, a lot of people to serve.
Thank you.
I have a question about the grant application. So I was looking for the deadline for the grant application, if there is a deadline, and then also, I was reading that you had to specify a 2-court area, and that's like a restriction. It has to be a 2-court area. Okay, so you can't put resurfacing money towards a new court. I mean, it's not like it is very strict grant.
Right,
okay.
and actually the original deadline was July 1st, and then when so we have to go through a process with Parks Board and City Council and everything. Then they contacted the area director and got permission to push it back.
To extend it. Okay, thank you.
Mark.
On the USTA website, they also talk about the blended court. And it seemed to me like when you looked at the grant guidelines, rather than taking a complete court, that the blended court allowed it some opportunity to use a court and line it both ways. Is this correct?
Yeah, we have the blended 60-foot courts already at Wilson. The paint is already down for those on those upper four courts, and that was a grant a couple years ago. But for this one, it is specifically for a 2-court facility, and to take one of the full-size courts and convert it to a youth 10 and under court. So that's what this grant is for. And there is a possibility, but there's a lot of parameters that you run into. Are you going to cap the post, and then who comes out and takes the caps out and puts the post in when you're converting to 10 and under? When do you convert to 10 and under? Is it certain hours of the day? Who's responsible for that maintenance? That's probably more applicable at a place with a pro shop that has someone on staff all the time at the facility.
But the lines are there currently for our blended court on
the lines aren't there for the 10 and under court. There's 2 courts. There's what they call a 36-foot, which is 10 and under, and then there's what they call a 60-foot.
Right.
And the lines are there for the 60 on the 4 upper courts.
Right.
The darker colored lines are painted on there.
I was just trying to think of a compromise.
Okay.
I also had one more comment on kind of the process, like I said, that the advisory board kind of went through on this. You know, looking in the future, you know, this is a centrally located park, getting 6 to 8 courts in the southwest corner with the regional park, getting the 6 to 8 courts in the northwest corner with the high school, and then we've added 2 courts down at Walker Park. It does leave a gap in the northeast, which is where we're going to be looking at next as far as adding tennis courts. That's in my vision. That's what I see. So, like I say, this is a centrally located place, and it seems like a good opportunity to, as a trial run, so to speak, for these size courts for the community, and really get a good feedback on it.
Okay. Thank you. Who else would like to comment on this?
No.
Aubrey Shepherd. I've listened to this discussion at several of the actual park board meetings, and it really is a tough one. It's that complicated thing with depending on grants for money these days. They have specifications that don't fit a lot of categories, or fit a lot of situations. But it really is a short time. It's in the old days, and even now, I bet it's still true, the best athletes come because they competed out of their age group always. 7-year-olds playing basketball at Walker Park and shooting against big men, and they learn to do it. The style's not exactly perfect. We used to have games in the parks here where usually 7 was the limit for small kids. But if we had some little kids who wanted to play, we'd step up close and pitch to them. And in a year or two, they're playing fast and skillful, and they've never been in a game like Little League or something with all of our, what's that other thing, T-ball. They didn't have that when I was growing up. But we go to a lot of trouble to create unnatural situations for kids when actually these parents should be playing against them on the big court and getting them started in brothers and sisters. But these are great programs if we can afford all of them. But I agree, it's pretty sad to remove, because I've heard these people, this has been going on 10 years probably, right? Some of you have been on the council, that there's always a need for more adult parks. And it would be nice for the kids to be able to use the same courts and not have to reduce what's there for adults. And the same thing, like when we used to have softball games at Wilson Park, there's nothing but a little girl-sized field. and the big boys knock it over the fence a lot, and people learn not to park out at the end of the fence when their adult games or, you know, the pickup games that go on. But the Walker Park, it doesn't even have an adult field, really. I mean, there's not a full-size adult field there, just bigger kid-size field. But I would hope that we'd make, I don't know, Mayor, we might reduce curb and gutter and afford paving some tennis courts, curb and gutter, and some of the piping that goes on in our city that some of us have been asking to stop doing so much of. But anyway, not a real solution at this moment, but sorry, I'm glad I don't have to vote on this.
Thank you, Aubrey. Who else would like to address us on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. What is the pleasure of the council tonight?
Oh,
Sarah.
comment. So this is a very difficult decision, and I've gone back and forth and reading the emails, and I appreciate all of the input that we've received. I grew up playing tennis from the time I was very little, on a broken down court across the street where the net was always hanging loose. And we would back off of the net and play, just hit the ball. And I played all through junior high, all through high school, played on tournament teams as an adult, and I'll still go back to playing tennis when I'm not at city council meetings, and I'll be advocating for the tennis courts later on. But it's a very important sport that you can play your whole life. The thing that I'm noticing with this is it doesn't seem like that we're gaining enough and we're going to lose something. And that's what I worry about. And it's hard because, of course, you see the young ladies here that want to play, but I feel like there are ways that you can play and learn to play tennis without also losing the services that we are already providing to citizens. So I guess I'm not going to be able to support this, which is a very strange position, I think, because usually a no-match grant seems like a no-brainer, but I feel like it's not a win-win here. I feel like it's not a good enough offer, and we lose something. Also, there's no turning back. That costs money to turn those back into a regular court, and I'd rather spend the staff time, the energy on figuring out how do we expand the services in this area, as well as the lighting, as well as other types of park services. We have awesome parks, and I just can't support this at this time.
Okay. Mark.
Again, going to the USTA side, what kept catching my attention was the blended court idea. And somehow it doesn't, I guess it doesn't seem to work, but yet that is what they talked about. And they did talk about assistance for developing a blended court with light colored lines and dark colored lines. And so it's very hard for me to make the decision here too. Living in the Wilson Park area and talking with my neighbors and with people who use it, I probably am getting a somewhat biased idea of, again, like Sarah said, what we're losing compared to what we're gaining. And I would like to move forward and look at a compromise situation where we could see, it says on the USTA website that there are grants to develop a blended court situation. And I don't know if that's possible for us, because I haven't looked at every single guideline. But again, we were directed there at the agenda meeting, so I did take time to look at it. And that's what caught my eye, is somehow to develop a situation where if we had a program for youth, or if we had the opportunity for youth development, and it was identified that we could somehow use a blended program so that we could also use it for adults. I don't know that that is really an honest answer, but it is mentioned on the USTA website and talked about a great deal, and that's where I got my information. So I'm very torn because we do need youth programs and we do need to develop our youth, and we know that there's an interest in our community. But I have just a feeling right now that we're not going to gain as much as we lose if we move forward. But I certainly know that we need resurfacing and we need lighting and we need facilities. That is for certain, and I know that, and I am supportive of that. I just don't know how we can sacrifice what we have from the information that I've received during this discussion. Thanks.
Brenda?
Well, if I understand this correctly, out of the 2 tennis courts we're talking about, 1 court will be converted into 4 youth courts. So we're technically losing 1 court to, well, I mean, we're not losing it because it can still be used for activities. It can be used for young people that have probably been using the adult ones. So I don't know. I mean, and that's the only way we get the grant, correct? If we do it this way, basically. And that improves both one that's an adult one that needs resurfacing, and it adds this. So what's the cost, or what would be the issue if, I don't know. I mean, I served on Parks Board a long time, and I feel like they thoroughly vetted this, and I feel like that, you know, the staff had good reasons to do this. I feel like it has been. I understand tonight we've certainly had some people that oppose it, and I've not been contacted, but I assume that you all have been by people that are concerned about it. But we need new tennis courts, but then as the staff has said that we're going to be gaining some back, some of the time back that we lose now currently whenever the high school has theirs. So I will support this simply because I think it's worth a try. It sounds like kind of an interesting idea. It sounds like, I mean, without us trying it, we don't know, you know, what could be used. And it's not to say we're not going to get more tennis courts. We do need them. I understand that. We have spent, you know, someone pointed out Rogers and other cities, we've spent a lot of our money on trails, you know, and that's been a trade-off, you know. So I think that we eventually will start putting more money back into, you know, once our trail system's built out. But anyway, I think this is worth a try, and so I'll support it.
Rhonda?
Well, I too appreciate very much the input from the public. I didn't receive very much public comment on this. I don't know if anyone from Ward 4 actually wrote to me about this, but in the same way that I have immense respect for my fellow council members and their opinions and their expertise and experience, the fact that the board voted 8-0, the advisory board, and the fact that these 2 people that I have immense respect in your expertise and in your leadership in our Parks and Rec program, and I appreciate what you do on a daily basis and the way you have your head in the entire city's goals and your hearts too. I appreciate what you've done here, and I think it is a difficult decision, and I'm going to actively support working. I'm glad it's been brought to our attention. I want us to support whatever we can to do something in the future. I hope our new senior citizen director will make some efforts to encourage our seniors to get out and use these a little bit. I think the more they can get outside living with 2 seniors every day who need more opportunities and more chances to get outside and not necessarily on the trails. I like the idea of smaller courts for people who used to play tennis and are now 90 and can't really get out there anymore. So I appreciate your expertise, and I'm going to support your recommendation.
Oh.
Once again, I'm not opposed at all to youth courts. I think it's probably a great idea. I do believe that if you look at the amount of money that's been spent in the last 10 years at Wilson Park, and I'm just going to say discretionary money, you could have built several tennis courts. Discretion is in the eye of the beholder. One thing that I adamantly would advise the tennis players, the adult tennis players to do, is volunteer to get on the Parks Advisory Board. You know, that's kind of what is kind of driven policy. But I would also caution and say this, that, you know, sometimes we don't always accept the recommendations. Sometimes we have to change or alter or disagree with recommendations from the Planning Commission. So the Parks Board is just an advisory board. And I would say one more thing. Yeah, I don't know whether I'll be alive when this regional park is built. Perhaps I will, perhaps I won't. And there's money accruing there. So where there's heat, there's fire. I was in a meeting here one night when Trails people became so active that this council, I didn't vote for it, but they voted $1 million in one night and to hire a crew to build these trails, and that wasn't even on the agenda. So just remember, you know, you tennis players, and the best scenario would be that if we could get a little of this money, perhaps, I think it's going to be a while before the regional park comes, and or maybe commingle with some of Parks Capital and build another court. If we had to take a youth court on the grant with the promise that there would be one built this year at Wilson Park, I'd feel differently about this, but that's not the proposal, so I won't support it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have to agree with my cohort here from Ward 1. I just don't feel like I don't believe what we're losing is comparable to what we're gaining. And I think her point is well made, that possibly some of the children will now play on the smaller courts, as well as some of the seniors who possibly are playing on the larger courts. So for lots of reasons, I will support this.
Justin.
I think it's important for me anyway on this council to trust the people on boards like the Parks Board and the Advisory Commission. I think they go to great lengths and thought and planning before they make recommendations. There's a picture in our packet here of Clarkston, Georgia, of what I think this will probably look like once the project is completed, and I think it's my big concern was the fencing and maybe ruining the playability of the adult court that would be left. But in hearing that shouldn't be a huge problem, I think that's very important. And hearing that Coach Gebhardt is willing to possibly let public use, even for a small fee, of these new tennis courts that I'm sure will be brand new and spectacular, as everything else in that high school is going to be. So I think that's a huge thing as well. So if we can gain those courts, gain a resurfaced court here, and gain multiple, I know personally, at the only one of these small courts I've ever seen in my life is at a private club here in town, and at the athletic club, and I see kids out there playing, and I see kids that I don't know if they would be intimidated with a big court or not, but they're not on this little one, and they're out there playing. And so there is a reason that soccer and football and basketball and every other sport seems like has gone to a smaller idea to get kids more involved. So it's a very difficult decision, and I completely understand the tennis players, but it looks to me like there's some hope on the horizon a little bit for them, and maybe we'll get some kids playing tennis that normally wouldn't be able to, because they'd have to pay a fee to join the place that has the small court here in town. So very difficult decision, but I'll support it.
Okay. Well, the first thing before we do anything, we have to have a motion and a second to
I'll
pass
move
the
that we
resolution.
Second.
pass the resolution.
All right. So any other final comments from council? Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
No.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
No.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
No.
Adams.
Yes.
Mayor, there are 4
I'll give it a
affirmative
vote.
votes, and
I
so you
support
can
it.
vote if you want to.
Yeah.
So the mayor votes yes.
Okay. Number 2, RZN 12-4135, 521 North College Avenue, Roddy. An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4135 for approximately 0.34 acres, located at 521 North College Avenue from C2 thoroughfare commercial to DG downtown general. Okay?
Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby changes the zone classification of the following described property from C2 thoroughfare commercial to downtown general as shown on exhibits A and B attached hereto and made a part hereof. Section 2, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends the official zoning map of the City of Fayetteville to reflect the zoning change provided in Section 1 above.
Okay. Jeremy?
This is a request by the property owner of a property at 521 North College Avenue, which consists of the Twin Arch Motel, two-building complex constructed in approximately 1950. They're requesting to rezone the property from C2 thoroughfare commercial to DG downtown general. Downtown general is one of the zoning districts, if you remember, created out of our downtown master plan. This is outside our master plan boundary, but those districts are available obviously outside the boundary as well. The Planning Commission voted 9-0 in favor of this request, and we felt it was appropriate as well in this particular area. A lot of the buildings in this area are actually closer to the street than C2 would allow today, and so this would actually bring that property more in compliance than what the current zoning on the property is today. So we're in support of the request.
Okay. What questions do we have for the council?
I have one question. Can we make them keep the deer that are out in front, those statues that are, sorry. Those things have been there forever, and they're sitting in concrete. I know several people that have tried to borrow them on occasion, and they go in there and grab them and realize that they're not movable. They are really cute.
Did you hurt your hands when you...
Hey, that wasn't me, partner. That wasn't me. Just kidding. I think this is a good idea.
What other questions we have in the council on this? What public comment do we have on this? See, now to bring it back to the council.
Well, I would move to go to the second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sonia, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4135 for approximately a third of an acre located at 521 North College Avenue from thoroughfare commercial to downtown general.
Move to go to third and final reading. Second.
Good.
Can I have a question? Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Jeremy, can you talk again about what downtown general allows that C2 doesn't, and C2, it's in the packet, but just for the...
C2, as you know, is one of our most intense commercial zoning districts. So there's a variety, about I think 20 different uses, including shopping goods, neighborhood shopping goods, trades and services, gasoline service stations, professional office, liquor store. Those are kind of the permitted uses. Downtown general allows less uses. Some the residential uses that we have, but also includes offices, studios, related services, eating places, which are your typical restaurants, neighborhood shopping goods, professional office, and multifamily dwellings. And those are the permitted uses. It's actually a down zone in some respects. What they gain are obviously a relaxation in setbacks. So you have build to zone as opposed to a 50-foot front building setback. You have, I think, less stringent side setbacks and rear setbacks as well. In this particular property, I think the intent is to keep the shell of the structure and to renovate the interior, so that this zoning would then not require them to go through variances in order to do significant renovations for that particular property, and also would make the property more developable. It's a relatively small piece of property for any kind of development at 0.3 acres. So the zoning that's proposed would certainly help that.
Any other questions on this? Is that in, what ward is it? Is that y'all's ward?
No, it'd be two, I think.
Is that two?
Yeah.
Yes, split by color.
Okay.
I move we suspend the rules for the third and final reading.
Second.
we've already
Okay.
had
I thought you
that.
already did.
Oh.
Yeah, we just need to vote on that.
I heard that.
I like that.
The motion is second, go to the third and final reading.
Goes to remind
Yes.
you anyway.
Sonia, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4135 for approximately a third acre located at 521 North College Avenue from thoroughfare commercial to downtown general.
Any final comments from the council?
Excited about the form-based vote along there. It's great.
Don't you might like that. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes,
Adams.
Yes.
that's a good vote.
Okay, number 3, vacation 12-4147, 510 West 11th Street and 989. I'm sorry, did I take public comment on that?
I thought you said you did. He raised his hand, but after we started voting.
I don't think I took
think
public
you did.
comment.
You did.
The
You did.
first.
Aubrey, would you like to make some comments? You were standing back there, I apologize.
Yes, sir, thank you, Aubrey Shepherd. I had a question about the zoning and how it would affect the Skull Creek, which daylight's pretty close. Will it be piped arbitrarily or something like that because of this zoning? Will it be allowed to actually continue as an open stream from where it starts now after it comes out? And that water comes from a large part of Mount Sequoia and so forth, so it should be qualified as a riparian zone under
That's
our
not the
ordinance.
same
Yeah, I
hotel.
think you're mixing that up with another place.
You're
We're
thinking
fixing
about
to get
down the road.
Are we talking about the place next to Baba Boudin's?
No,
It's,
No.
it's not that, there's one a little bit farther south on North
Yeah.
College there. Same
Almost
side of the
across
street.
from,
Right next to Papa John's
Twin
Pizza,
Arches.
isn't it?
yeah,
it's on up the hill, with the deer.
you know, the deer,
Twin Arch.
On up the hill,
the deer.
on the same side of the road. Go look again, you'll see it.
Right next to where the
I'm
sun
sorry,
is.
I wish we'd have had a map to show it so I wouldn't ask that dumb question then. But I was thinking it was just
No.
down, the motel that's down in the hole there next to the
No,
stream.
no, no.
It's not in,
That's Trenton Street, Trenton and College there.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, thank you.
It's okay.
Well, I didn't look at the map, I didn't go to look at the address. I did go some places.
now you see, I don't feel so bad about not taking public.
Went local.
Okay. Now let me move on to number 3, vacation number 12-4147, 510 West 11th Street and 989 South School Avenue, The Grove. An ordinance approving vacation 12-4147 submitted by Morrison Shipley Engineers Incorporated for property located at 510 West 11th Street and 989 South School Avenue to vacate a portion of right-of-way, a total of 0.01.
Whereas the City Council has the authority under ACA 1454-104 to vacate public grounds or portions thereof which are not required for corporate purposes, and whereas the City Council has determined the following described portion of the platted right-of-way is not required for corporate purposes. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby vacates and abandons the following described right-of-way shown in Exhibit B attached. Section 2, that a copy of this ordinance duly certified by the city clerk, along with the map attached and labeled Exhibit A, shall be filed in the office of Recorder of the county and recorded in the deed records of the county. And Section 3, this vacation approval is subject to the condition of approval and shall not be in effect until that condition is met herein. Vacated right-of-way shall be retained as a utility easement.
Jeremy.
This is a request to vacate a very small portion of right-of-way for a project, the Grove Apartments. The project was approved back in earlier 2011. It's obviously under construction. Actually, 3 of the buildings received their temporary certificates of occupancy just last week and started being occupied. This particular area, 500 square feet, is requested to be vacated right-of-way. It's an area at the corner of Dunn Avenue and National Street where it actually makes a curve. The new curb and gutter and the new sidewalk that parallels the street actually makes the curve as well, but the right-of-way comes at a right angle. There's a retaining wall necessary there, a short 2-foot retaining wall to actually allow for the sidewalk to be located there. So the request is to vacate that small portion of right-of-way so that the retaining wall is not within the actual right-of-way. The Planning Commission voted 5-0 in favor of this request, and staff is also recommending approval.
Okay. What questions do we have, Jeremy? Sarah?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
Who suspend the rules?
Well, let me get some public comment. What public comment do we have on this? Come on, Aubrey. I didn't miss you this time.
I know where this one is now. I wasn't sure what part they were talking about when this thing's advertised, and I hadn't got it down straight, but it's at that corner. My question, in looking at it, they're really building out near the street, which I hope, you know, in 5 years, the planning commission staff will stop putting things out by the street. But anyway, that'll be 2050 or something when they do that. Anyhow, the question is this simple one. Is this going to narrow the street any, or is this just going to narrow some right-of-way that was not being used?
Jeremy?
It will only narrow the right-of-way that's not being utilized. The street will stay the same. Actually, it's actually a little bit wider than what it started out as before the construction.
Okay, so we're going to have at least a 5-foot sidewalk on that side.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the council.
Who suspend the rules, go to second reading?
Second.
We have a motion second to go to the second reading. Sonia, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance approving VAC 12-4147 submitted by Morrison Shipley Engineers Incorporated for property located at 510 West 11th Street and 989 South School Avenue to vacate a portion of the right-of-way, a total of a 1/100th of an acre.
Who suspend the rules, go third and final
Second.
reading?
Have a motion and a second to go to the third and final reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance approving VAC 12-4147 submitted by Morrison Shipley Engineers Incorporated for property located at 510 West 11th Street and 989 South School Avenue to vacate a portion of right-of-way, a total of a 1/100th of an acre.
What final comments do we have? Everybody good? Okay. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay. Number 4, ADM 12-4136, 2768, East Shagbark Bend Zwag. An ordinance amending that residential plan zoning district title R, PZD 04-0500, Hickory Park subdivision located north of 2730 East Township Street, containing approximately 4.4 acres to reflect revised building setbacks for Lot 14.
Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that RPZD 4-5 Hickory Park subdivision, as passed and approved by the City Council on March 16, 2004, with ordinance number 4549, is hereby amended by reducing the rear east setback of Lot 14 from 20 feet to 8 feet.
Okay.
Hickory Park subdivision was approved in 2004 with 14 single-family lots. As a planned zoning district, you're all aware that the applicant actually proposes zoning criteria. So it's a zoning decision when the council looks at a planned zoning district. You're looking at density, building height, bulk and area requirements, and setbacks. In this particular case, each lot was assigned certain front, rear, and side setbacks. And lot 14 had a 20-foot rear setback or east setback. A building permit was approved for lot 14 in 2011 and construction was completed this year. The site plan, as you'll note in the building permit that we approved, would be compliant with that particular building setback. However, a survey completed this year shows that a corner of the roof overhang for a deck that was added later on after the permit was approved revealed that a portion of that was within the building setback. It's not within utility easement, there are no utilities there, but it is within this larger setback than normal. Most single-family districts have a 5-foot or 8-foot side setback, and so the request here is simply to change that to a more typical residential setback of 8 feet, which would remove entirely the encroachment for the deck. Staff is supportive of this request, and the Planning Commission voted unanimously 9-0, recommending approval as well.
So if I'm looking at this right, this house has a 20-foot setback all the way around it almost?
It is a Close. It has a 15-foot, I think, around I guess that would be around Shagbark Bend and Mockernut Crossing. There's a 15-foot building setback and utility easement there. But then, and I think the reason that it was shown as a 20-foot sort of side or rear setback was there was going to be a shared driveway that ended up not being the way that the homes were constructed. And so it's really not needed any longer.
Okay. It's kind of an unusual way of approaching this, but I guess it's okay.
I think the difference here, normally the Board of Adjustment would see something like this, but
Right.
because it's a planned zoning district, you all approve the zoning criteria, and so instead of going through variances process, they come to the city council to
Okay.
actually amend the building setback.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a unique lot, and I can see where that setback would, it's kind of overkill there. I mean,
So my question relates to the fact that it says that it's not built out yet. Is that still true?
The
I was
subdivision?
reading through the, yeah.
I don't believe so. I'd have to go out there.
Yeah, there's a couple left, looks like.
There's still some left?
Yeah.
So does this affect those? if
No,
they
this is
get
just the
those?
one lot, just
Okay.
one lot 14.
So they won't come and say, we want a different setback?
If
They could.
they could.
Okay.
But this does not do that. They'd
But
have
this
to come
does-
back.
I know, I realize that this does not, but. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, when appropriate, I'd move we go to second reading.
Can I take some public
Sure.
comment? And then we'll do just that very thing. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Okey dokey, Bob.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance amending a residential plan zoning district entitled RPZD 4-5 Hickory Park subdivision located north of 2730 East Township Street, containing approximately 4.4 acres to reflect revised building setbacks for lot 14.
And so,
Move we suspend the rules, but we haven't had any comments, Jason, or Justin, or any other one, Mayor, from out there, so I'd move we suspend the rules and go to the next reading. Second.
I have a motion and a second to go to the third and final reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance amending a residential plan zoning district entitled RPZD 4-5 Hickory Park subdivision located north of 2730 East Township Street, containing approximately 4.4 acres to reflect revised building setbacks for lot 14.
Any final comments from the council?
No, we
No, we're done suspending all the
Okay,
rules.
we vote.
Suspend it all weekend.
We've gone as far as we can go until we vote. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay. Number 5, ADM 12-4174, Complete Neighborhood Plan. Resolution to authorize the city staff to prepare a complete neighborhood plan for the Weddington Drive corridor.
Staff is excited to submit a new complete neighborhood plan for the Weddington Drive area west of I-540. That's our recommendation. As you all know, every couple of years we try to put together a complete neighborhood plan, the first of which was in 2004 with the downtown master plan. We actually hired a consultant, Dover Cole, and partners to come in and do that one. We followed that up a couple of years later with the Walker Park master plan, and then Fayette Junction was our last one. We also squeezed in City Plan 2025 and City Plan 2030 in that time frame. So it's not always exactly 2 years, but we try to stick to as close to that as we can. What we do with these neighborhood master plans are a couple of things. One, we start a process where you all identify a boundary utilizing some criteria, and I'll go through that in just a moment. But once you all sort of authorize us to go forward supporting that boundary, what we do is conduct research into that area and the surrounding area. We utilize historic data. We're able to utilize this time our census data, which we did not have for Fayette Junction or Walker Park, recent census data, so we'll be able to utilize that. Traffic patterns and counts, infrastructure constraints and opportunities, demographic and other census data trends, as I mentioned, environmental impacts, and the results, obviously, of the City Plan 2030 that you all passed last year. All that data is then compiled into reports and graphics that can be then further analyzed comparatively during the development of the plan. We also conduct a public participation process called a charrette, which is an intense 4 to 5 day process in which staff sets up usually a site located within the boundary area. In this particular case, we've been talking to the Boys and Girls Club because it's a very public area. A lot of people are familiar with it. It's very near this particular area. We hold, as I mentioned, a roughly 5 day charrette process that encourages quality public comment. We reach out to stakeholders in the area. We reach out to conduct focus groups with our emergency service providers, with the library, with anyone in that area, the business community, in order to try to get as much information as we can. Historians, that was a big component of the Fayette Junction Master Plan to try to understand the history of the area. 2 products come out of this primarily. A vision document, which establishes it's all of this analysis and recommendations for applicable implementation steps and potential policy recommendations that we could take forward in the future. That includes tools such as zoning recommendations, design guidelines, master street plan amendments, and even capital improvement recommendations that could then be looked at by a street committee or the city council as a whole. The second product that comes out of it is an illustrative map. We actually put together an idealized build out. It's just one scenario. There are 50,000 scenarios you could come up with. It's just one. I always have to say that this is not the only project that could be developed on every parcel, because we do end up drawing on people's property. We're looking at a piece of property and just saying this is one possibility. And we try to approach all those property owners. We notify them of what's going on and try to get their input as much as possible about what they see the vision of their property. But we also take input from all the neighboring residents in that area and the neighboring business owners and property owners that might be looking to sell their property. Actually, there's one property owner, hopefully he'll speak tonight here, he lived in the area for 40 years, and we're going to set up an interview with him to hopefully get some history and what this area looked like 40 years ago or even 15 years ago. So we put all that together through this process, and it's been a very successful, I think, invigorating public process for the last 3 projects that we've done. The criteria that we use, we had developed actually several projects ago, and there are primarily 4 criteria. We look at does it meet the city's goals outlined in the city plan, which is City Plan 2030. Secondly, is the area experiencing development pressure? I think that drives a lot of what one of the other criteria is, which is does it have potential for significant public participation? Because any area that is seeing development pressure will obviously bring up issues and bring up questions around traffic and density and what's going to happen on that vacant property that we play ball on for the last 30 years. So those are the kinds of questions that we try to invite in and try to answer. And then also, lastly, if the area has a high percentage of vacant or underutilized land. In this particular proposal that we're submitting to you tonight, it actually has the highest percentage of vacant land that we've seen in a proposal. 70% of the land is either vacant or underutilized, and by underutilized means it could be utilized more efficiently with higher density or more development on the same parcel of land than what's already currently there. We looked at 4 areas within town. We looked at the Joyce Avenue area, which is comprised of a lot of office buildings, some smaller neighborhoods. Went up all the way up to Zion Road, down south to south of Joyce into the Mud Creek corridor. And certainly an interesting area to look at. We applied these 4 criteria. We thought some of the opportunities would be looking at creating a more complex street network and a comprehensive zoning and build-out scenario. We are seeing some development proposals come through our office right now along Joyce. The challenges, I think, would be there's some existing disjointed nature of the development pattern. We have a lot of lack of connectivity, so neighborhoods can't connect to neighborhoods directly adjacent to them, and so that was one of the things that it's already built out, and that's a challenge, obviously, when you're trying to do something like this. And then also, I think, probably a limited amount of public participation because there was so much commercial and office activity. We didn't know if there would be a lot of public participation there. Secondly, we looked at the Colt Square area. It's a great central location in town, all the way from Gregg to College Avenue, Township, several schools in the area, both private and public. And so we thought there were a lot of good opportunities there. Challenges include a lot of the area was in floodplain, and really couldn't see, we wouldn't propose a lot of future development in some of those areas. And it's also not really seen a lot of development pressure recently. Thirdly, we took some cues from the council and the overlay district discussion and looked really quite closely at several overlay district possibilities around the university. One of the challenges, I think, is that if you start looking at the university growth boundary and start trying to form cohesive neighborhood units, it ends up being a 1,000-acre project, which is well beyond the capacity. We then try to break it up into smaller units, but some of the discussions that we had during our staff meetings was that this town and gown committee that has been formed hasn't even met yet. And so we really felt like some of this information and some of the discussions and debate that will go on as part of that will help inform what we do in any neighborhood master plan. So I think you'll see that one come back up on a future plan as part, probably not the entire 1,000 acres, but at least components of that. But we just felt that there really should be some time period given to some of this town and gown committee discussion before we jump into a neighborhood master plan. That way we don't really step on the toes of that process and let that play out as we think it should. And so that's one of the reasons we did not select that one. Ultimately, we did recommend looking at an area along Weddington Drive from I-540 to 51st Street. I haven't been able to get the projector to come up tonight, unfortunately, to show you the map, but essentially it's about 345 acres, principal arterial, high traffic counts in this area, and it serves a large number of residential, commercial, and institutional uses on the west side of I-540. We felt it provided the greatest opportunity for a complete neighborhood plan to impact future growth and meet the goals of City Plan 2030. I think actually Mr. Walsh here quoted some statistics in his newspaper article from Sunday from 2000 to 2010. We've seen 75% growth in population in this area, significant growth pressure. So while we haven't seen that much growth in the last 4 years, think of how much actually happened between 2000 and 2006, say. We're also starting to see a rebound. The Walmart Neighborhood Market has been newly located. There are 2 projects, one under construction in the same area, Forest Hills near the Neighborhood Market, and a new restaurant about to break ground there as well. So there we're seeing some development pressure, certainly. You all rezoned about 40 acres for a mixture of development out near Broyles Avenue about 3 meetings ago. So those are some of the indicators that we see as prime for redevelopment or development opportunities in that area. There's also a very primarily suburban residential form of development in this area that we feel could benefit from a more connected street network, particularly neighborhood to neighborhood. And so those are some of the things that we'd like to look at as some challenges or opportunities if you want to look at it that way. Also to providing walkable commercial destinations for those residents to get to support services in commercial areas that might be attracted to the traffic counts along Weddington Avenue. We also want to try to address the very large arterial that is Weddington Drive. It's a sort of an impenetrable barrier currently between north and south of Weddington, and so trying to find a way to make a good form, utilizing some of our tools like form-based codes and our master street plan to hopefully inform some good growth patterns in that area. This is also to help spur economic development. We feel like we can bring tools to the table that will help to provide some of those opportunities. Lastly, I'd like to mention that we'd also feel like there's some great potential partners in this project in this area. The Boys and Girls Club, Owl Creek Elementary School, Ozarks Electric, a long-standing corporate member in this area, and then a lot of the existing retail, restaurant, grocery, hotel, and apartment uses in the area. So with that, we're recommending approval for the city staff to begin this process starting tomorrow with looking at the Weddington Drive corridor. Hopefully we'll be able to come up with a better name than that so that it's indicative of the neighborhood as we go through the process and start researching history. But that's our proposal at this time.
Yeah. I have one quick. Why didn't y'all consider going on out to 54th Street? Because of the, you you look at the map there is a lot of, on the north side of Weddington, there's several sections there of look like 40-acre tracts probably.
We actually considered going all the way to Double Springs Road, and as we've been asked to look at, go east of 540 as well. Part of it becomes a capacity issue. We recognized in Fayette Junction that the project site boundary got a little large. I think that was around 450 acres, and we really didn't get to study all of the property area that we really wanted to study. We actually drove out there today looking at a lot of the corridor as well and had the same conversation again. Actually, we'd probably rather move further west to see that transect of very rural coming into more of a commercial nature than we would moving further east, because I think they're very different neighborhood boundaries, west of 540 than east.
I agree with you, but I guess I just wonder why you didn't go down to another street. According to this map, you're not at 51st. You're on past there, the section line or something.
We're about a section line past. We're actually on the section line past 51st.
Wouldn't it be easier to define it by street boundaries?
A lot of times we try to stay just on the other, a lot or a block on the other side of the street, so that we, in an illustrative master plan, we can show how both sides of that street would develop, as opposed to just limit it, at the street boundary. It's not always the case, but we try to do that as much as possible. And that was a trick that Dover Cole taught us in downtown master plan, to try to go on either side of a street. So even if we went to 54th, we'd probably go just a little beyond, just to capture the entire intersection.
Okay.
What other questions do we have, Sarah?
So we talked about it at Ward 4, and Lee Olson came and did a very good presentation. And one thing that came up during the meeting was the discussion about on the east side of this is saying, is there a way to go beyond Weddington a bit and capture some of that commercial just on, beyond 540 a bit, and capture some of the commercial just on the other side, essentially capturing the entryway both ways to the city, in order to not perpetuate the perception of a divide there. And so that came up as a discussion topic, and I'm very supportive of that. In order to, and not to extend a lot in acreage, but to at least, I know that there's commercial right there on the southeast side of the intersection. And I'm wondering if that, I guess I would like to propose that be included in the consideration. Now, I recognize that too, and this was something that Lee told us about with it. This is the proposed area, and it's really primarily commercial, so you're looking at commercial planning with input from all different stakeholders within that area and all over town. So I'm looking at this map saying, well, there's some commercial on the east side of 540, if we could capture that as well and have that be contiguous.
We did look at that, and I had fully planned to show you on the screen here the two options. We actually came up with two different options. Unfortunately, our technology failed us tonight. We looked at two different options there, one of which would basically go east of 540. Essentially, we just grabbed one lot. So we grabbed Bill and Eddie's motorsports lot, and then we grabbed not even the full commercial development there at the Marinoni property, but just kind of the frontage, just to see. The highway department, I think, has conceptual plans of new interchange and new bridge alignments if and when that area becomes 6-lane. And so they will, in a lot of ways, dictate kind of what those changes might occur. That added about 85 acres when you incorporate that, so it went up to 424 acres. When we incorporated the commercial piece as well, it's basically a commercial subdivision that the Marinoni family developed, or someone developed many years ago. It went up to about 451 acres. So it adds quite a bit of property there, not all of which would be planned, because some of that's within the actual interchange itself. So keep that in mind. There's got to be 20, 30 acres of the actual on and off ramps located on either side of the interstate. But that's at least where the numbers came in terms of capacity.
So really, we as a community would be communicating ideas for really just the part that would be just on the eastern side of the interchange. The interchange we don't have much say in. I say invite the highway department to
that was certainly one of the plans,
Shreds.
to do that, because Weddington is also a state highway facility.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a highway
He'll be there.
and interstate.
Yeah.
I doubt that show.
I will note, we also, part of that acreage increase, is we took in the hotels that you all had recommended at Ward 4, I think, in that agenda session. We took in, west of 540, sort of those hotels, that have been developing. I think there's plans for at least one more, and a restaurant site potentially in that area as well. So that's part of that acreage too.
Okay,
He means the other hotel.
thank you.
All right. Yes.
I just like I said, I'm looking forward to public input. I know we have some Ward 4 people here, and maybe they're going to speak, but I have not heard any negative comments from people, and I've heard a lot of positive. I think Leif did a very nice job of presenting to our Ward 4 meeting. One of the things that was brought up at that meeting, and I mentioned this at agenda session, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Enduring Green Network and how that works into a plan like this.
Sure. So as part of City Plan 2025, one of our goals was to create this Enduring Green Network. When we got to the update 5 years later, last year, City Plan 2030, we recognized that we really needed some more information around what that is. And so we actually went out utilizing some data that multiple groups had put together, but primarily the name's escaping me now, the Natural Heritage Society, Natural Heritage Foundation, and utilizing some of their boundary data and some of their information to try to pull together a workable map that encompasses parts of the entire city and actually in our plain area as well, that connects people to different places, utilizing trail networks, utilizing natural areas and corridors, utilizing on-street linkages, so a number of ways to connect both wildlife and people back to nature. A portion of this area actually is traversed by one of those corridors. Believe it or not, it's in the middle of a commercial corridor. However, so is Skull Creek Trail, and that's right through the heart of town. So in this particular example, we felt there were a number of ways to connect things like Bryce Davis Park. There's a large tree preservation area that was dedicated as part of the Forest Hills project south of Weddington. There's obviously Owl Creek Elementary, 2 creeks that traverse in the general vicinity of this area. And so the Boys and Girls Club, so trying to hook those things up will be part of this analysis as part of a green network, combining trail connections, on-street linkages, and just vistas and views of the nature that's there. So that's the intent behind that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? We will take public comment now.
How you doing? I'm Mike Emery. I live basically right smack dab in the middle of this whole project. There's so much potential for growth out there, and this is a viable plan, or could bring us a viable plan that could hinder out of control suburban sprawl and result in a beautiful welcoming part of the city, because with the 540 right there and Weddington, that's a gateway to the city. So you want to be able to draw people in too, you know. Again, with connectivity, connecting everything up is a good plan, making livable, more livable for the entire area, people out there. And it would also reduce, like Sarah was saying, the impression that west of 540 is at times a different part of town, or a different town than the rest of the city. So I strongly urge y'all to approve this.
Thank you. Who else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the all right, Charlie.
I'm Charlie Sloan. I live at 46th and Persimmon out in this area. Been involved with a few things that have happened out there in the past. I encourage you to go forward with this. This is something we really need. Mayor Jordan and I worked on things long before we became mayor out there. And back in the olden days, we had a difficult time even trying to get a dry cleaner out there. So I remember we got one turned down. So yes, we do need, it's time to get that side of town going forward. It's growing out there. It's a great place to live. And like I said, we'd like to have the amenities the other parts of town have. And we would like to get on this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. Who else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Any final thoughts? I need a motion in a second if we're going to.
Move that we,
I would like,
go on to,
yeah,
And
I thought
we'll
you
get some
had
more
it.
comments there.
yeah, I guess I am supportive of moving the second reading, but I do think I'd like to hold it.
Well, it's a resolution's the
Oh, it's
only
a
problem.
resolution, sorry.
So you'd have to do a motion to table if you
Yeah,
want
you
to
have
keep
to
it.
table it.
I'm supportive of it, but I didn't know if there's,
Oh, why would you wanna
Yeah.
hold it then?
yeah, I guess that's kind of, okay.
I move that we,
It's all been very
has it
supportive.
been moved
that we-
second?
Okay.
Okay, well, we have a motion in a
I
second
thirded.
from somewhere. So-
Just-
Okay, hold on, this is,
Okay,
sorry,
all right,
hold
all
on,
right.
stop. This is
Stop
what
it.
I'm not sure we're voting on, is Jeremy said he had presented two different approaches, and that's what I'm not clear on what we're voting on. Because if there is a plan that does capture just the other side of 540, I would be supportive of that. So I'm not, so does it require an amendment to the resolution if this is part of the packet, or how
It
does
would
that
require
work?
amendment of the exhibit,
Okay, so I
which
would,
is being
Question,
adopted
please.
by the resolution.
okay.
Yes, Bobby, you may.
Jeremy, will this affect the time or the manpower involved to do this?
I-
An amend?
I don't believe so. I mean, I think
Okay.
that we could be
Okay.
supportive of that, and we'll get
Okay.
a map with
No
the
problem.
new exhibit in your packets so you can see that.
Okay. So what do we need to do?
So you want to do an amendment to the exhibit,
Except that we
correct?
had a
To extend
motion
it
and a
to the
second.
east of 540, is that what you're,
Yes,
as described by Mr. Pate?
yes. Except that we had a motion and a second, so I'm not sure.
No, you can,
Well, we'll just do a redo.
I'll be happy to,
Can we do a
I'll be
redo?
happy to withdraw mine.
Well, let's withdraw, then we'll do a
I'll be happy
redo.
to do that and let her amend it,
Okay, so I would like, I propose to
however it works.
amend the exhibit to the resolution as, to capture just on the east side of 540. And I guess this second exhibit that Jeremy would present.
That you might have seen.
That I'm imagining is,
Okay, we have a motion and a second, I assume.
Yes.
I hear a
Do we
motion.
need to say where it is, because that is just to the east of Marinati property, which
on the west. So it's
Not
just on the east of
included.
540, so it would
you
capture.
just want to the frontage road, to the east?
What does it look like?
And so Jeremy has
Essentially,
another exhibit.
essentially what we did is just captured just one lot. It's not a large property to show development on, but it would show the interchange, and it would actually show to just to the east of the on ramps, that on and off ramps there of the interstate.
Okay.
Is everybody good? I want everybody good and solid here before we vote.
Ready to sing?
Who was the second to the motion?
I don't know.
Which motion?
The
The one to do the
I
amendment.
propose
Brenda.
To
amendment.
amend the exhibit.
The redo a motion.
I withdrew and I seconded her amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that work?
Who's on
Yeah.
first?
If you withdrew your second.
I didn't withdraw anything. I didn't
Well,
have
there
a
you go.
second.
Well, she didn't withdraw anything. All right. It's flowing right along here. We have
I
a
made
motion and a
to the
second.
First motion.
to-
And she's
Yeah.
made, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Everybody good?
I'm talking about them.
Now we have a
the
motion and a
amendment,
second
the
to
second.
amend the exhibit to extend it to the east side of I-540. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. Everybody good?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, do we have any public comment on this? Well, good. We don't have any public comment, so I'll bring it back to the council. Everybody good with the amendment?
Mhm.
All right. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay, the exhibit has been amended, now we're ready
Now
for
we're ready to
the
go
actual
for the
resolution.
whole thing.
I
So
move that
moved.
we go,
I'll second.
that we pass.
We already have the motion.
Brenda made a motion and Ronnie gave a second, right?
It works.
Okay.
I think we're getting hungry.
All right. Any final comments from the council on this?
Oh, I have one final comment,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
All right.
I just
no.
understood when we talked about this before, that these lines, that you have to draw a line somewhere. There will be some given, things are gonna look, we're not just holding on to these very firm lines, and so I look forward to you doing whatever you need to do to present to our ward the very best plan you can. If it means, I think we have to expect a little bit of staff privilege here.
Thank you. I think that's what we've utilized in all of our master plans. When you actually see something that obviously needs to be addressed, we don't just ignore it. Just finally, too, we're looking at an October date for our charrette currently, and so it's just something to be aware of. There'll be a lot more publicity and press out about it as we get closer to that date.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, you're very welcome. Is everybody good now? All right. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay. Now, for your enjoyment, number 6, the petition for writ of Sarah Sorby. Pretty good?
Certiorari, that's pretty good.
Certiorari. Sorry. Certiorari. How about that?
You got it.
All right, certiorari. Petition to writ of certiorari and appeal to the United States Supreme Court. A resolution to authorize the city attorney to file a petition of writ of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court and appeal the awarding of attorney's fees in the rock quarry case.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as I explained on July 5th, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the district court's awarding of attorney's fees in the case, even though the judge had never actually considered the constitutional claims, never got to the constitutional claims. They were just pled but never acted upon. I felt that was wrong, and so I appealed it to the 8th Circuit. The 8th Circuit did affirm, and there is a split in circuits on this. I think the 5th Circuit agrees with the 8th Circuit on that, and the 4th Circuit does not. And in my belief, the Supreme Court would not, in this particular case, think that it was appropriate to award attorney's fees. And so I felt like on July 5th, I was just going to go ahead and appeal. It was going to be somewhat costly because of the fancy printing cost to the Supreme Court, like $2,500. But I felt like I had enough money in my budget to be able to handle that myself. After that, and so I did not feel like I had to come to the City Council at that point in time because I didn't feel like there was any risk to the taxpayers. After that, our insurance company, who is on the hook to pay these attorney's fees, decided that it wanted to exercise a portion of its contract that it has with us where it can settle, and if we decide to proceed, then it would be at our risk and no longer at the insurance company's risk. When that occurred, then I realized that there could be ramifications for the taxpayers, and you all are the conservators of the treasury of the taxpayers and the conservators of their revenue, and therefore this was not a decision I could make on my own, especially because when you do file for a petition for a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court, there's a very small chance that you will be successful. Between 1% and 2% of all the petitions are granted. That means 98 to 99% are denied. If a petition is denied to the Supreme Court, and it is in a fee-generating case, as this one would be, because that's the only thing we're arguing, then normally attorney's fees are going to be awarded to the side that prevailed. In this case, it would be the rock quarry. And so we would have a very high percentage of likely failure and a cost of between $30,000 and $40,000 if it was unsuccessful. This was not something I could do on my own. As you know from my memo, I still believe that this is something that I would recommend because I feel like I think our chances are probably better than the average petition. I think that they might be significantly better, but they wouldn't be any better than about 10% chance of having it granted. So 90% of the time it would be denied and we would owe additional attorney's fees. If it was granted, then we could go and do the appeal to the Supreme Court. I think our chances of success at the Supreme Court are much higher than they are just to get the petition granted. I think that the chance of success before the Supreme Court would be better than 50%. I would hope they would be in the 70% range, because I do believe that this particular case is very similar to the 2001 case that the Supreme Court decided on a 5-4 basis to not allow these kind of attorney's fees. And when they did that case back in 2001, they reversed most of the circuits that had allowed attorney's fees in cases similar to what we were facing with right here. So I think our chances would be better. But if we failed in that case, then the fees would be even more that would be assessed against us, probably excess of $100,000. And if we win, we won't get attorney's fees for us, because in the civil rights cases, only the government pays. The plaintiffs do not pay, even if they lose. So that from a purely financial point of view, it would certainly make no sense whatsoever to appeal. However, this is a very important fundamental principle, I think, and so that's why I still recommend that we appeal. But that's just from my perspective on doing it. I can tell you that I have mixed feelings about this, not only because of the likelihood that the taxpayers might have to spend another $30,000 or $40,000, but also because right now I am preparing the appeal brief and addendum and abstract for the TIF case, where we were sued by the school district, and I'm appealing that to the Arkansas Supreme Court, my second time to get to appeal the TIF decision to the Arkansas Supreme Court. I hope I'm going to be successful this time. I was the first time, but there's no guarantee. Secondly, if you remember, there was this ordinance that was kind of hotly contested for the project, Cleveland Street project. That has been appealed. This is the first time that our planned zoning district has ever been appealed. As you know, the planned zoning district has both zoning factors. In fact, the majority of them, I think, are zoning, but there are also some development considerations in a planned zoning district, especially one that's been engineered enough so that development would actually be approved when the planned zoning district is in fact approved by the city council. So there had been questions raised about whether or not, what is the proper test? Is it purely the arbitrary and capricious standard, or is there a possibility of a trial? Might even be a bifurcated decision. So I've already filed 2 briefs in that particular case and anticipate more, and I also anticipate this going to the Arkansas Supreme Court, because I don't think the Arkansas Supreme Court has ever squarely faced a situation of a planned zoning district. They have looked at something out of Little Rock that was similar, but they did not really discuss the ramifications of that like they will probably in this case. So it's not like I'm looking for work to do. I have more almost than I can handle, but on the other hand, I still do recommend that you grant me this authority to file for a writ of certiorari. I will not be heartbroken if you tell me no.
Okay. Who wants to be first?
We'll go. So the point that I would like to make is that there's a precedent here that I think needs to be considered, and it's the fact, and I guess I'm going to cite from your memo here, because I think it's a good point. It says, from a long-term perspective, we in every city in the 8th Circuit might be faced with more frequent declaratory judgment challenges to ordinances being filed in federal court with weak due process claims alleged in an effort to collect attorney's fees. So in the long term, the cities could face increased costs. So what this has done is weaken our ability as a community to establish legislation. And that's not something to take lightly. And the history here for folks who are new is that this ordinance was created in an effort to really protect people in Ward 4 from the nuisances that were created as a result of the rock quarry and the red dirt mines. In this case, it's the rock quarry. And those citizens needed help, really, from the city. And so the Ward 4 representatives worked with the city attorney, and this council approved ordinances to establish ordinances that would regulate the nuisances and minimize the nuisances for those people. And that's what our role is one of our roles is to do that type of thing. And this kind of claim, I guess, complaint, and this type of finding minimizes a municipal legislative body the ability to do that. The other thing that I would say here is that there's certainly risk, but I think that there's a long-term risk associated with not moving forward, and that is the general principle and I want to read this. The reason to appeal would be to establish the principle that taxpayers should not be forced to pay attorney's fee unless the government has actually violated someone's civil rights. And that was not well reviewed by this judge. And this is something that is an important part of this, that they barely looked at our work and then just filed without any consideration, and then the memo, it doesn't even cite any of the ordinance or anything, and so it's just not well reviewed, and therefore our taxpayers were not well represented by the federal judge, and that's not fair. So that's why I would say it's okay. I'm supportive of moving forward for the principle of the fact that legislative bodies should be able to create ordinances that protect the citizenry, and you should be able to continue to fight for taxpayers' ability to have representation and not have to lose their ability shouldn't be forced to I'm trying to say I'm getting tongue-tied. But they are claiming that we violated their civil rights and the citizenry violated the civil rights, and it's not true, and it's not even, there's not even an evidence that they considered our claim, and they based judgment on something that they didn't fully understand. And when I say they, I mean a particular federal judge. Which is important to understand who your president is appointing. That's what.
Just don't go there.
Yes, Bob.
Kid, did this go before one federal judge or the whole court of the 8th District 3-judge panel?
This was originally decided by the local district judge. It was appealed to the 8th Circuit, where a 3-judge panel did hear that. We did not ask for a hearing in bank. We felt like it was more important just to go straight to the Supreme Court on this. So the entire 8th Circuit did not hear it, but a 3-judge panel did hear it.
That's what I was trying to get to, sir. It wasn't just one judge, it was 3 judges. In reference to what you, I guess I'm in disagreement with you, sir. I don't think that this in any way diminishes our ability to pass legislation. Judges are either elected or placed in there, appointed, in the case of federal judges, to try and look at both sides of an argument. At an early point, you were talking about the Ward 4 people and the city attorney working on this. Well, if you remember, we scrambled to rescind the law. This deal was going on. I don't think that, number one, I don't think it in any way has any effect on our ability to pass legislation. I think that's in the eye of the beholder. I think some people don't like to be beat. And I can say it's for the better good of everyone that we prevail. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, I don't feel comfortable at all, as Kit points out the odds here, of shooting craps in a double jeopardy deal and spending the citizens' money. And but I would change my mind. If you can get every first-class city in the 8th District who you say this is affecting, if they'll split the cost with us, I'll go with the deal. I don't think they want to. I don't think you're going to get another city of the first class in the 8th District that would want a writ of certiorari on this deal, the Supreme Court. So I understand he's wanting to go, and I understand he's got a big workload, and I understand I do not think it's the wisest choice, even after Kit tells us it's a 90% chance we'll lose. I think it'd be a bad decision for our taxpayers. Thank you.
Who else? Okay. What public comment do we have on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. do we have a motion and a second to go forward? We have a resolution, correct? We need a motion and a second, then we vote it up or vote it down.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments on this? It's a resolution.
I just don't want people to forget those folks out on the west side of town who are still suffering.
This will help
Mayor?
that.
Yes.
Please don't forget all the taxpayers that we're gonna, that'll be on the other end of this deal too. Okay.
Everybody's flowing. All right.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, I truly struggle with this decision too. But I feel like with a 90% chance that probably is not wise for us to make this decision. But that makes me very sad because I believe in our attorney and what he recommends to us and how he feels cities are going to be affected.
I can say that if we do not go forward, then at least we will now know that normally a defendant is quite happy when the plaintiff's case is dismissed as moot, which is what happened to the constitutional claim. Because you won, it's gone. Except now they said even though it's dismissed as moot, you still pay attorney's fees for it. So in the future, throughout the 8th Circuit, all the city attorneys know you cannot allow a case to be dismissed as moot. You have to demand that you get a judgment and a hearing on that particular case, because in this particular case, the district court had actually complimented this city council in its legislative actions in creating the ordinance, listening to the rock quarry owners. He congratulated you. It was not that you violated anybody's due process rights. And so if I had any inkling that by winning, because the case was moot, that we would get hit with attorney's fees, I would have objected. So now we all know that if that ever happens again, we will object. We will not allow a charge, a complaint against us, which is frivolous, to be dismissed as moot.
And that will cost money to do.
Well, I don't charge beyond my regular salary. I don't get paid extra for cases, so it won't cost any extra money beyond filing fees or whatever like that.
Yes, sir.
And I'm very sad about this too, and I appreciate Della's comments, and I have every confidence in our city attorney as well, and I think you've done a great job. I've listened to you argue, and I think you do a great job. And I do think we shouldn't forget about the people who are affected by nuisances in our city, and we should keep working, not only in the ward that I love very, very much, but all of our wards. We should continue to try to find ways, moving forward, learning something from it, but to take that amount of money when we have so many other things that we've been talking about tonight, and it probably won't change anything anyway, then I'm not going to be able to support that risk.
Anybody else? Okay. If there's not any other final comments, Sandra, would you, if you vote yes, we pass it, okay? Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
No.
Boudreaux,
Yeah, I'm confused about how we're voting.
If you
This
vote
would
yes,
be
you're
to
gonna
pass the
abstain.
resolution to authorize me to file
Okay.
for a petition.
No.
Kenyon,
No.
Tennant,
No.
Farrell,
No.
Adams,
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there any other announcements tonight?
It was.
Yes, Mayor. It's time for our boards and commissions and committees to take their applications, and I want everyone to listen carefully. The applications close on August 24th at 5 o'clock, and it's very important that and I know it's been in the paper several times, but especially last time we had several people who brought theirs in late, and we kind of have to stick by what we've announced for a full quarter. So we have numerous openings. I would encourage you to go to the website, but there's Animal Service Advisory Board openings. There are Environmental Action. There's Parks and Recreation, Historical District, and then we'll be forming the new Town and Gown Committee. So that's very important, and we'll have one representative from each ward, and we've already had some action in this area. So I'm hoping that you will take seriously our openings and that we'll have lots and lots of applicants. Thank you so much.
Okay, Jerry?
On Thursday at Gully Park, Chase Missy will be closing out the final Gully Park concert series show. So please try to come out and bring your families.
Okay.
I have just one. I think several of us have talked recently about how kind of heavy our hearts are for our police and fire stresses that are on them right now with the dryness. Our firefighters are kind of on high alert with some things that have happened in our city. Our police officers are working extra hours and long hours in kind of dangerous situations. So I just think when we pass them by, we tell them thank you and we tell them they're in our thoughts and prayers. I think it's a tough time for our police and fire right now.
Anything else? With that, we're adjourned.